Hello and welcome to episode 23 of the Writing Talk podcast with me, Mikey Cantling. And this week, after a quick romp through my bits of news, we'll be launching into this week's main topic, which is all about handling those all-important turning points in your fiction writing. And we're not really going into a writing clinic feature at this time. I think we'll have to put that on hold for a bit and see how that goes. But there will be a writer's toolbox at the end of the show, and I'll be telling you about a newish software service that I'm using. Welcome to the Writing Talk podcast, the show that helps you to build your skills as we go on our writing journey together. Okay, so this week I've been putting into action something that I mentioned last week. You might remember that I mentioned a short story that I was writing in a previous episode, and that has kind of gone on stream, though interestingly not for sale. So here's what I've done. Because kind of everybody says, oh, sign up for my newsletter and you'll get a free book, or, you know, some bits of latest offers and things. What I've done is I actually have two pieces now which are exclusive to members only and aren't for sale anywhere. I've got the Breaking Ground novella, which is kind of an add-on episode to the Darkening Stone trilogy, and it's about 12,000 words. It used to be a perma-free title, and now it's not for sale anywhere. And I think that kind of works because it was written separately. It's not like I'm, stealing anything from anybody. It's an add-on, so it's kind of a something of value, I hope, to subscribers. And also, I've written an add-on short story. It's about half that length, I think, a bit over 6,000 words. And it's kind of an add-on epilogue, kind of an add-on extended scene, almost like a DVD extra kind of thing, that I've added onto the cheat code story, so that when people sign up for my newsletter over on mikeycampling.com/free books, just to give you a hint, they get links straight away to both of those extra things that they can add. So it depends where they come from. If they come from reading cheat code, then they might enjoy that extra story I've just written. If they come from reading Trespass, the first Darkening Stone book in that trilogy, then they'll probably enjoy the extra novella that goes with it. So hopefully I'm giving something of value, and who knows, people might sort of cross-fertilise and go from one stream to the other as well. So that's nice. That's kind of there. It's a friend who's a really interesting sci-fi writer. I'm reading one of her books at the moment called, she writes in the name S.J. Bryant, writes sci-fi. It's got quite a long series now called the Nova Chronicles, and I'm looking into that. I'm just about to start reading. I'm going to take it on my holiday for my holiday read. So, worth checking out. But she's a really nice person and has really helped me by doing some beta reading for me. It's always great to have another set of eyes on something. So that's kind of kept me busy this week. Over on what I'm going to do, I haven't set this up yet, but over on the WTP Workshop Facebook group, hop on over there and join if you haven't already. I'm going to put a thread up there to each week to sort of, so you can go on there and post what you're up to and maybe set your goals for the week. I'll come back to that later, just remind you of that later at the end of the show. Okay, I think we will launch into the main topic. Right, so this week's main topic is about handling the turning points in your fiction. And I will go on to explain exactly what I mean by that, because perhaps different people call them slightly different things. So I think all good fiction will have some turning points. What I mean by that is, if you think of your favourite movies, especially if it's a nice dramatic movie, I'm talking about those moments when you're really on the edge of your seat. The hairs on the back of your neck are standing up, you hold your breath, your heart's pounding, that kind of thing. And I watched the Revenant when that came out, and how many great turning points were in that movie. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. Even just for the art of storytelling. Great thing to watch for that, see what you can get from that. But I mean, there must be, dramatic moments in that movie, like 20 or maybe more. I'm sure if I sat down now, I could make a list of them as well. Because although I watched it some months ago, I'm talking about those moments, really stuck in my mind, really had an impact on the whole audience. Now, in that film, some of those turning points will be major, some be minor, but they're all important. And here's the thing, if you think about that movie, if you've seen it, or maybe even if you've seen the trailer, you can perhaps get an idea that it's kind of a movie set in a harsh environment. There's quite a lot of hardship involved. And perhaps why those turning points have such an effect and why that movie was so popular and really affected audiences is those turning points, they're all hard won in the story. So they have an impact and they have a meaning because none of them were easy for the characters involved. And I believe this, I'm thinking about this for this podcast really crystallises for me. No one's interested in easy. We don't get excited about easy. We don't emotionally engage with easy. What we like to see are those difficult scenes. When we talk about things having, being high drama, we talk about tension, we talk about conflict. None of these are sort of a nice, sunny day and a picnic in the park moments, are they? Those are the things that really, stick in our minds. Okay, now, so let's hopefully we're on the same page now that we all understand exactly what I mean when I say turning point. So those moments that we have that kind of give a meaning and impact to our story. Now, in our writing, it's really quite tempting to make our turning points happen just because we want it to be so, like Picard, and make it so kind of thing. And that we think, all right, the story demands it. And in our minds, we kind of want our character, let's call him Brian. We want him to give up his life of crime because then we can be really clever later on in the story and we can plunge him back into that world later on, because then sort of becoming an important factor in our story. So we kind of have this almost mechanical idea in our heads that we have to have this happen so that this can happen. One thing has to follow the other. So in that example we're talking about, which, is sort of thing you've seen perhaps before, later on, poor old Brian, having given up his life of crime at the beginning, will then be forced to take part in some kind of audacious bank heist, or, in order to save the love of his life or something. But if we just stop there, we don't push ourselves to think any further beyond that, we're going to end up with a real kind of sort of cardboard cutout scene. The kind of thing where Brian says, I've had enough of this life. What does it all mean? From now on, I'm going straight. It's just kind of, when I said that, did that make the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end? Did it have you on the edge of your seat? Did you gasp in amazement? Did your heart miss a beat? Or do you say, oh no, not that old trope again? I mean, if we have a scene like that, and it is quite easy to write a scene like that, we'll just, chuck it in because we've got to have it happen. What we have is what I call a homeward bounder. It's a phrase, and there's probably more than one use of that phrase, but I heard it many, many years ago, and I can't even remember what it was called, but I think it was a TV drama, and it was something to do, there was this scene where all the people in like a factory had to stitch together all these clothes for some reason in a really short space of time. I can't remember why, but it was important. And one of the old hand in there, the old sort of grizzled lady sort of person, said to the young person who was struggling to keep up, said, put in a few homeward bounders. And what she meant was longer stitches to get the job done quicker. But of course, in that story, I seem to remember that the young person didn't get away with it. And they were made to take out their long stitches and do it all again because, those long stitches might have been quicker, but they weren't neat and they were far too weak. The whole thing was going to split at the seams. Now, in our story writing, we don't want to end up with the literary equivalent of a hole in the seat of our pants, do we? So hopefully that sort of picture will stay with you, a little analogy that'll make you think, oh no, am I doing a homeward bounder here? And, we all do it. But why? Why do we end up with these things? Well, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. There are good reasons, I think, that we all probably tend to do these. In our rush to get our first draft out of our heads and onto the paper, we blast it all down and then we move on. We just think, right, this happens, and then we go on. And that's fair enough. It's a good thing to do to get that first draft down. And also our brains are working fast, and we're already thinking about the next scene and the one after that. And we just, our brains are already thinking, oh, then that could happen later. And, we rush through something. And all those things are fine, because that's what the first draft is for, just getting the story down onto the paper or onto your word processing documents, whatever. You can't edit and improve what isn't there, so it's good to blast it down. And there's another reason when you're writing a scene like that, is that sometimes we don't actually realise how significant that scene is until later, because the story develops in a certain way. And, say the character, you realise as you get to know your characters more that a certain scene that happened earlier on was actually really important to them. And it was important to their character development, but you didn't realise that while you were writing it. So, there's a kind of hindsight thing comes into it as well. So that's all fine. And, don't beat yourself up if you find you've rather rushed over some important turning points. The more you write and rewrite and polish your work, then the more we develop our eye for this sort of thing. It's a bit like a photographer getting an eye for composition, or, a singer getting an ear for a way a piece of music should be handled. It's part of the process. It's part of our learning. And as you get better at it, then you kind of a little light comes on at the back of your mind that says, hang on, that this could be a turning point, or hang on, this could be some foreshadowing we could put in here, or this could be a theme emerging. These are the little things we get with practice. And I've mentioned it before, but it's worth just remembering that part of what we're doing as we write is we are learning to become better writers all the time. So when you're learning, that struggle is very useful. It's, embrace it. Don't shy away from it or think, oh no, I'm rubbish because I'm struggling. Quite the reverse. If you're struggling, it perhaps means you're working hard. So, you're improving, whereas other people are just blasé and putting down any old thing. So, when we learn something new, it starts off laborious. It feels unnatural. It feels forced. You have to work at it. It feels as though it's very external to you. It feels as though it's not part of your thinking. But as you engage in battle with it and you struggle through it, it becomes internalized and it becomes natural. And that will happen to you more and more the more you write. So, okay, first step in fixing our turning points and making really good turning points in our fiction is that awareness. Just knowing about them and knowing how important they are. Yes, you'll have some major turning points in the novel as a whole, or your piece as a whole, depending how long it is. And really, each scene ought to have one. So each sort of significant episode in your story might be a minor one, but it's some kind of turning point in there. In his book and his podcast, The Story Grid, there's a very experienced editor called Sean Coyne. I've mentioned it before on the show. There's a good podcast. I'll put links in the show notes, but I've put links already on the site somewhere. That you could give your turning points a kind of value of positive and negative. So a scene might start positive, say somebody gets a promotion, and it might end negative when they get home and they discover their partner has left them, for instance. So that scene would turn and it would go from positive to negative. And he suggests things like you can go from negative to sort of double negative, or negative to positive and positive to double positive and so on. I mean, that's quite a useful way of thinking about it. If that analogy works for you, then use it, whenever you can. I think he's really making the point, though, that a scene that doesn't turn, that there aren't any kind of turning points in it, doesn't really hold the reader's interest. So, if you have a scene that starts positive and ends positive, it kind of, it doesn't really go anywhere. So, the person, your character, she goes into work and gets a promotion, she goes home and she finds her husband has made her a nice dinner for a surprise. And it kind of feels, yeah, okay, so that's a bit like padding. Did I really need to know what she had for dinner? Your reader's getting a bit disaffected there. And what we want is some little hint, at least, that something is going to change somewhere. Because readers like a sense of travel. I mean, I'm an avid reader, and as readers, we talk about being carried along by a story, don't we? We like that sense of motion, of a sort of progression. Okay, we have this our newfound awareness now. We're thinking about turning points, and we're looking on our work, and we're looking out for scenes that seem to go nowhere, or scenes that seem to shift too easily. You know, the old sort of, oh, I'm going straight, I'm not going to do anything anymore. You know, things like that. Change, I don't know about you, but change in my life has never come easily. It's always been sort of something that you've kind of got to overcome a certain level of resistance in order to change, haven't you? I think most of us find there's usually something, and sometimes changes are beyond our control, and they can be negative, they can be positive. They're what makes life interesting sometimes. You know, our writing is trying to reflect life in some way, I think, so the experience will chime with our readers. So for those changes to be significant, then in your fiction, then they have to be changes that the character would care about. So what matters to your character? Are they driven by greed, by love, by status, by power, wealth, jealousy? You know, do they have this overwhelming desire to protect their loved ones, or great aspirations for their children? Do they need to escape something? I think we need to have that established for the reader in the first place. So set it out for your reader so they can grasp onto it. And we do that, we've mentioned this before, you know, don't just explain, don't just tell them, but give the readers clues, give them some kind of hint, and just enough so the reader kind of thinks, oh yeah, I know a guy just like that, or you know, or this is a very powerful thing, that they identify with the character personally, and not necessarily in a good way either. You know, sometimes people often say, well, like the villains, and sometimes that's because those negative characteristics kind of, in a slightly guilty, secret way, remind us of our own worst qualities. Sometimes we can all be greedy or foolish or bitter or impulsive, that kind of thing. And sometimes just having a hint that there's a character, has a characteristic like that, kind of reminds us and think, yeah, you know, it just kind of chimes somewhere, not necessarily consciously even, it chimes with us because we're identifying with it in some way. You know, there's that there but for the grace of God go I kind of feeling, you know, or what would I do in that situation, these kind of things, you know, you think about. So we'll establish that for the reader. We'll let them know just what kind of character they are dealing with, and hopefully we'll sort of just put some little clues in there, give them something to hang on to, and then once the readers kind of feel they've got a grasp on that situation, we can start to give our characters something or take it away from them. So something that they want, we can let them have it, or we can deny that to them. That's kind of the first level. Then we can kind of go be a bit cleverer, and maybe we can, instead of just giving them this promotion or something, if that's what they really want, if they're a career-driven person, maybe we can put that just out of their reach. So that's just a bit more powerful, a bit more engaging. So we don't give them their promotion. We give them a rumour that they overhear whilst they're, you know, getting a cup of coffee or something, that you know, Simpson from accounts is retiring or something. It's something like that. You know, they hear a rumour that something's happening, and then later perhaps we can build on that. We give them a bit more responsibility. So the person's kind of there raising their eyebrows and going, me? You want me to take over that? You know, so they can't quite believe it. We can gradually bring it in. So we're making this turning point happen over time, really. We're kind of leading the reader into our turning point in a nice kind of set-up way. Or the flip side of that, because remember, it doesn't have to be a positive, our turning point. We can hint that they might lose something. So, you know, this career-driven person, instead of hearing a rumour that could be promotion on the cards, they hear a rumour that there's a merger going on, and there's, you know, there could be redundancies, or perhaps our character who's desperately in love with their partner catches a glimpse of them, you know, through the car window, and hang on, I thought she was going to the gym this afternoon, so how come she's going across town all dressed up, you know? And, you know, maybe something's going on, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there really is a good excuse why she's doing it. So, you know, we're involving our readers with it. We are, again, planting questions in their mind. Okay, so we've established the characters, we've led them into this turning point, we've made the turning point matter. So at this point, we've put in some really good groundwork, haven't we? We've got things going. We've sown the seeds of suspense. Now we get to go in for the kill, having set it up, finally. Instead of rushing into it and just having somebody blurt it out, we've set our, almost set our trap carefully. We've led our little trail of breadcrumbs for the reader to follow. And then here we are. Now we're going in for the kill. And don't be tempted to rush over this or sort of brush over the cracks. Don't be tempted to do Homeward Bounders. Let's really see that confrontation or that conflict in full. Let's feel that tension build. You want to be able to feel the tension between your characters if it's a tense type of situation. We want dialogue to be short and snappy. We want all the description to really pull its weight. Every word must count. If we can, we want to try and use an original turn of phrase or two, rather than just be too sort of cliched at that point. Some things, you have to put them in and everybody recognises them, and it's okay, to have blood pounding in your ears or your heart hammering in your chest, whatever. If we can try not to have too many cliched phrases, though, if we can sort of a bit of salt and pepper of something that's a bit more of an original way of putting it, then that's great there. Good place to put in a nice bit of electric prose. Body language is great here. That can be really economical, as well as our nice punchy dialogue. We've got some nice body language, maybe instead of somebody sort of explaining how angry she is with her partner, she folds her arms and stares at him, but she doesn't actually say a word. And that's quite an economical way of thinking, oh yeah, I know what she's thinking. She's going to let him have it in a minute, rather than her full explanation of how upset or disappointed she is. She's just nice bit of body language, for instance. Try and keep your dialogue naturalistic here. Again, you're feeling proud of your turning point and you may feel the terrible urge to explain it in full. Please don't do that. Let the reader enjoy it, working out for themselves. And anyway, when people are very stressed and very tense which they might be in your turning point situation, they often really can't explain themselves at all. They kind of, the words fail me, we say, don't they? And that happens to us at these moments in life. People say, I can't, after everything, just kind of ellipses you can't see. I know what I'm talking, but people are, but I've always tried. They can't even finish those sentences. They don't say, how could you do this to me? Things like that. Well, they might do that. But they're more likely just to say, why? That's that simple word. That's all they can come out with. They're so angry. Their face has gone white with anger, and they're just, why? All they can say. And also, I think, just being a bit sort of pop psychology here, I think often people in a confrontation, they don't want to say those things. Not at first. They might let fly later, but at first they're kind of really bottled up and they really don't want to say it. They find their partner's having an affair or something. They just look at them and say, I know. And the person's going, what? They don't say. They try not to say much, because when you're lying, you try to say as little as possible, don't you? And their partner says, I know what you did. Something like that, And sometimes somebody just looking and saying, I know, it's so much more dramatic than say, I know you're having your affair with Melissa who works at the office or whatever. That just has no impact at all. And it sounds unnatural. Okay, I feel like that was quite an intense burst of stuff that I've given you to think about, which after all is the whole point of this podcast. You might think I am totally wrong or totally right about things. That's absolutely fine, but hopefully I have made you think and hopefully raised your awareness. I think, what can you do to raise your game a little bit? What can you do to look for those turning points? How can you recognise them? How can you make sure they're there? Look for them where they might be missing. Make sure you haven't done any homeward bounders, and then really go in for it. Having led your reader up to that turning point, then go in, and that's the place for your lovely bit of electric prose that really makes your reader turn the pages and just, hold their breath for a moment. And with that, I'll go on to the Writer's Toolbox. Okay, so for the Writer's Toolbox section, I'd like to tell you about a service rather than a bit of software that I've started using, which is quite popular at the moment, and it's called Bookfunnel. And the site is bookfunnel.com. And it's not a free service like so many things are. And you kind of wish that the people would just like work out a price and, rather than, oh, it's free, but then there's all these things that don't work. I think in dollars it's $20 a year, so not a huge amount. And I haven't really explained what it is. Bookfunnel is a way for writers to give away copies of their ebooks in quite a friendly kind of way. So if you want to provide a bonus to your email list subscribers, or you want to give away a review copy to reviewers, that kind of thing, it's quite a simple, straightforward way, because not everybody knows how to download a book and get it onto their device, their Kindle or whatever app they're using. So Bookfunnel comes in the middle there and it steps in. They kind of host your files. You can put as many books as you want up there. And you can put up several different formats. So let's say you put up EPUB, Mobi. You might put up a PDF. I think those are the three that it copes with. You put your book cover up there. And what they do is they provide one link for you so that you can say to people, instead of saying, oh, here's the links to all these 3 different things on Dropbox, and then they don't know and they go on Dropbox and Dropbox tries to get you to sign up. People are confused whether they should sign up or not. And they give up, never get your book. What they do is they go to this Bookfunnel link and there's a help me button on there. And what happens is if they get stuck, it takes them through saying, how do you want to read this book? Do you want to read it here or do you want to read it there? There's a demo on their site if you go there. Say, do you want to read it on Android? Is it a Kindle? If so, then it goes, if you select Kindle, it'll say, is it this kind of Kindle or that kind of Kindle? So people know whether it's a Fire or whatever. And there's little videos on there to tell them what to do. But if all else fails and they don't know what to do, there's a help me button on there. And you don't have to help them as the author because Bookfunnel helps them. And I understand from other people that they are pretty helpful. I haven't used their help service myself, but other people have told me that they were actually really helpful and they just talk them through it. They get back to you. It's what they do. So, for $20 a year, that's a pretty good service. I think there's 500 downloads a month or something you can give away, which is a reasonable number for certainly to start off with. And so that's what I'm doing now. So I mentioned I'd tie it in with this because, I said there was a free novella and a free story that I'm giving away to my newsletter subscribers. Well, they are both on Bookfunnel. So all I have to do is give one link in my newsletter. They follow that, they get to a special page. It says, get my book, and there's a picture of the cover and a description and so on that I've set up there. And it'll take them through and it'll make sure they get the right file for that ebook reader. And if they get stuck, they'll get some help. And there's video instructions and things telling them what to do. So I think it's a pretty good service. I think a lot of writers are starting to use this now. And it's certainly worth a look. If you're not quite at that point yet, then, make a note of it for later and come back to it. But if you're currently somebody who tries to get, say, review copies out to people and you're struggling with, they come back to you and say, oh, I can't load this, I can't get this file to work, whatever. It's a real pain, isn't it, if you have to deal with suddenly become a tech support person, which you didn't really want to do. For that sort of price for a whole year, I think that's pretty good to palm that job off on somebody else. So far seems good. And as the writer as well, you get to track how many times the links have been viewed and how many times have been downloaded. You can create as many links as you want, I think, for each book. So I could create a specific link. The other day I gave somebody a copy. I created a specific link for that person. And, don't worry about piracy too much. What you want to do is be discovered. So, yes, other people could get the link, but you can control them if you want. You can put dates on them to stop them working. You could say this only works so many times. So you could say to people, oh, there's 10 copies to give away or whatever, and you can make it work 10 times, and so on and so forth. So it's quite controllable. It's quite intuitive. It's nicely set up, and I've had no problems at all with it. So I can only say good things about that. Okay, so I will sign off now. Fairly rushed through that episode, I feel like, but I think there's hopefully quite a bit of useful stuff in there. Don't forget the Facebook group over on facebook.com/groups/WTP workshop. There's a Facebook group there for you guys. We've got a few members now, and as it grows, it'll become more active. It's fairly quiet at the moment, so you're kind of guaranteed some attention. I will probably not manage to get episodes out over the next couple of weeks because I'm going on holiday, and because I don't like doing an interview show where I kind of get, I could have got lots of pre-recorded interviews scheduled to go out. It's a bit harder to cover because I spend quite a lot of time preparing these shows and so on, writing the content and things. So, I'll set you some summer work for the next couple of weeks. I'm just kidding about that. I'm not going to set you homework much as I'd like to. Other than, have a look for your turning points and just see how you're handling them. Check you're building the tension and you're making the most of those turning points, because they're kind of the meat and drink of your book. And I will see you again soon, or talk to you again soon. But I will be checking in with the Facebook group, because I'll be able to do that on my phone and things. So I'll be checking in with you there. So that's a good way to get in touch. Also, you can subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Spreaker.com. And if you go to the website, writingtalkpodcast.com, and writing.talkpodcast is all one word, then you can subscribe via Android devices. You can subscribe by a special email that sends you an email each time there's an episode. And there's also a newsletter style subscription where you get a little letter each time, an email newsletter each time there's an episode. And if you sign up for that one, you get the couple of freebies that are set as like a spreadsheet to help you track your word count, and a writing poster for your door. Have a look over on the website anyway. And of course, all the contact details are there. And keep in touch. If you want to find out anything more about the books I've mentioned, then mikeycampling.com is the place to go. And if you do /free books, then guess what you'll be able to get? Free books. Yes, the special ones I just mentioned. And you can have a go at downloading something via Bookfunnel if you sign up for that newsletter. See what you think of it as a customer. Try before you buy. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. I will talk to you again fairly soon. In the meantime, have a great summer or winter if you're in a different part of the world. But have a great time with your writing. Keep writing, keep scribbling, keep tapping away at the keys, and above all, while you're doing it, keep smiling. Thank you and goodbye.